Her birthday passed again with no call, no card, no care. Ellen Radley, retired CPA, and twice abandoned matriarch, didn't flinch. That night, she opened the trust document they never thought she'd reread. Clause 19, Conduct Review, Beneficiary Removal Permanently. By the time they realized their accounts had frozen, she was already on her second glass of cider. They forgot the date. She remembered the clause. All right, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor, subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. The light from the skylight landed in a golden square across the foot of Ellen Radley's bed. The angle told her it was nearly 9 a.m., but she hadn't moved. She was still lying beneath the quilt she'd made in 1982, tracing the stitching with her fingers, the faded thread like familiar fault lines. Her phone sat face up on the nightstand. Black screen. No blinking. No sound. Not even Mila's soft triple heart emoji yet. Ellen reached for it anyway. Thumbprint, unlocking a digital silence. Email. Mostly spam. Calendar notification. Happy birthday, Ellen. Courtesy of a subscription app she couldn't remember downloading. She opened messages. Nothing from Derek. Nothing from Claire. Not even an automated "hope you're having a great day" that Claire occasionally scheduled through her phone's shortcut. She tapped into Facebook. The first post that loaded showed Derek and Claire posing under a wooden vineyard arch, wine glasses in hand. Claire was in a linen jumpsuit. Derek in a designer flannel she knew he hadn't paid for. Annual harvest trip so grateful for traditions. Claire had captioned it like Ellen hadn't been the one who started that exact trip 17 years ago. Ellen's eyes flicked to the timestamp. Uploaded at 6:42 a.m. this morning. She didn't cry. She rarely did anymore. But she felt her mouth tighten in involuntary, practiced expression she'd inherited from her own mother. Pressed lips, silent endurance. A buzz finally came. Mila. Happy birthday, Grandma. Sorry about them. There was a broken heart emoji next to it. Ellen stared at it for a long moment. She typed back a single sunflower emoji and set the phone down. The back door creaked open at 9:12 a.m. sharp. Monica's voice called out before the screen door snapped shut behind her. Your porch furniture needs repainting, and you look like someone who remembers everything. Ellen was already at the kitchen table, a mug of black coffee cooling beside her. It's true, I do. Monica set down a foil-covered plate. Lemon bars. From the good batch. Ellen peeled the foil back and inhaled. Sugar and zest. Warmth and defiance. Monica sat across from her, not asking what Derek or Claire had said, because they both already knew. 72. Monica raised her eyebrows. I thought we weren't letting numbers define us anymore. I'm not, Ellen said, tapping her nails against the ceramic mug. But they are. They sat in silence a while longer. Outside, a lawnmower growled 2 doors down. Inside, the only sound was the slow click of Ellen's spoon against the mug's rim as she stirred without sipping. At 10:03 a.m., Monica stood. Call if you need me. Or if you need me to key someone's car. Ellen smiled faintly. I'll start a list. When the door closed behind her friend, Ellen didn't move. She stared at the pale morning light spilling across her hardwood floors, at the vase of wilting carnations Claire had dropped off last Mother's Day, with a post-it that read, For you, in someone else's handwriting. She stood slowly, joints stiff, and walked toward the hallway. Her fingers brushed the edge of a picture frame on the wall, her wedding photo with Robert, then Derek's high school graduation, then Mila at 5 in pigtails and a crooked tooth. Past the photos, past the umbrella stand, was a locked file cabinet. She pulled out the key from her sweater pocket. Trust docs active. The folder was thick, manila, and neatly labeled. She slid it onto the kitchen table, flipping past power of attorney documents, annual statements, notarized amendments. Page 6, Clause 19. Conduct contrary to stated family intent may trigger beneficiary reassessment. She read it twice, then once more aloud. The wording hadn't changed in 22 years. She and Robert had written it together. Ellen had insisted on it after Derek's third DUI. Intent matters, she'd said. Character matters, Robert had agreed. Now she reached for a yellow legal pad, drew a line down the middle. Left side, what they think this is. Right side, what it actually is. Her pen hovered for a second, then wrote in the right column. Inheritance isn't permission. Ellen stared at the line, then underlined it. Once, then again. Outside, a car door slammed. She didn't move to the window. Let them come, or not. Her hand found her phone again. She opened her banking app. She opened her trust app. She opened her calendar. Then she wrote at the top of the yellow page, 5th birthday forgotten, 1st birthday remembered. And beneath it, she added just one more word. Begin. The morning after her birthday smelled like dust and leftover coffee. Ellen didn't bother changing out of her robe. She sat at the kitchen table in wool socks, the yellow legal pad from the day before folded neatly beside her, still open to that single word. Begin. She tapped open her phone out of habit, not hope. Facebook had more to offer today. Derek had posted an entire carousel of high-resolution photos from a birthday dinner just not hers. The first image showed a glowing farmhouse restaurant, Edison bulbs dangling romantically over reclaimed wood tables, the kind of place that required a reservation weeks in advance and charged $22 for arugula. Slide 2. Claire, toasting with a glass of Cabernet, arm hooked into Derek's. Mila sat between them, smiling but slightly turned away from the camera. Slide 3. A dessert trio with a sparkler candle stuck into a slice of flourless chocolate cake. Ellen blinked. She tapped Claire's comment, pinned to the top. Love our little traditions. Wouldn't miss it for the world. Her thumb hovered, and for a moment she considered writing, "You missed something else" instead, but she closed the app without reacting. The silence that followed felt different than the day before. Not lonely, not wounded, just sharp. The phone buzzed again. Mila, as always, getting to the heart of things without being asked. I told them to call you. They said it would ruin the mood. I'm sorry, Grandma. Ellen didn't reply right away. She reached instead for a pen and pulled the pad toward her. On a new page, she wrote across the top, "What they assume." She drew a box around it, then underlined it. Twice, she began a bullet list. That I don't know where the money goes. That I won't act without telling them first. That love is automatic. That I don't remember birthdays. That I'm furniture. The last one she stared at a beat too long. The screen door creaked again, Monica, punctual as grief. Don't worry, she called before she even stepped in. I didn't bake this time. Just here to check your blood pressure via passive aggression. Ellen smirked. So? Normal levels then. Monica set her keys down and dropped into the chair across from her. I saw the photos. I didn't say anything because I wasn't sure if you'd want to light something on fire or take up boxing. I made a list, Ellen said. Monica leaned forward. God, I love it when you list. Ellen handed her the yellow pad. Monica scanned it quickly, then looked up. You're the grantor, she said, tapping the paper. Not the furniture. Ellen didn't smile this time. She reached across the table and opened her laptop, clicked the shortcut for Radley Family Living Trust dashboard. Her fingers moved slowly at first, then steadier. Log in. Two-factor authentication. Security phrase. Intent before inheritance. That part always made her scoff. She opened the legal tab, navigated to Power of Attorney. Active. A drop-down menu asked, Modify or Revoke? She selected Modify. From the adjacent drawer, she pulled a slim manila envelope marked Emergency Protocol, Interim POA, her own handwriting, pre-signed. Monica said nothing, just crossed her arms and watched, like someone at the final move of a long chess match. Ellen uploaded the form, verified the timestamp, and confirmed the new setting. Temporary POA grantor Control Derek Radley removed. The screen refreshed, just her name remained. No fanfare. No pop-up confetti, just silence, like the kind you get after closing a very old door. Outside, a neighbor's dog barked twice and fell quiet. Want tea? Ellen asked. Monica blinked. After that, I want scotch. But tea'll do. As the kettle warmed, Ellen glanced back at the photos on her phone. She zoomed in on Mila's face in the second image. The girl was smiling, but the edges of her eyes told a different story. A tiredness, a turning. Ellen's phone buzzed again. Another text, from Claire this time. You good for Sunday lunch? Mila's asking. We thought maybe you'd want a little catch-up. She stared at the screen, thumb hovering. Then, without a word, she slid the phone across the table to Monica. Monica read the message, then looked at Ellen. What are you going to say? Ellen poured the tea. Nothing yet, she said. Let's see what they do without the furniture. It was a Sunday, the kind that smelled like cold toast and dusted pine needles from last week's storm. Ellen was at the sink rinsing out a chipped planter when the knock came sharp. 3 raps, like someone who wasn't used to being ignored. She dried her hands slowly, watching from the narrow front window. Claire stood on the porch holding a bouquet of supermarket flowers. Derek stood behind her, both hands in his jacket pockets, shifting his weight like a child caught mid-lie. No text, no call, just presence, 2 days after the day that had passed without a word. Ellen opened the door part way. Morning. Claire's voice came first, sugared and falsely breathless. We thought we'd drop by. These made me think of eugenias and some kind of eucalyptus? Ellen eyed the tag still dangling from the plastic sleeve. Manager's special $4.99. They're very cheerful, Ellen said, stepping aside. Come in. Claire sailed past her with exaggerated brightness. 72. That's a lucky number, right? Something about multiples of 12? Derek followed, offering a sheepish half smile. We didn't want the weekend to get away from us. Tea? Ellen asked, her voice smooth as lake water before a storm. They both nodded too eagerly. As she turned toward the kitchen, Ellen caught Derek's gaze flick quickly toward the hallway, specifically the file cabinet. She said nothing, only gestured toward the table. Claire set the bouquet on the counter like a trophy she'd earned. We've just been running nonstop. Work. Mila's college tours. You know how it is. I remember, Ellen said evenly, placing 3 cups on a tray. Seems like you were at the vineyard again. Claire looked up, blinking too fast. Oh, yes. Annual tradition. You should really come next year. It's not the same without family. Ellen smiled without warmth. You're right. It's not. They drank in quiet sips, broken only by the clink of Claire's spoon stirring nothing. Derek stared at his cup as if he'd been handed a test he hadn't studied for. Then, like it had just occurred to her, Claire leaned forward. So, have you had a chance to go through the trust stuff? Just wondering if anything's changing this quarter, distributions or reallocations. Ellen raised an eyebrow, her hand still wrapped around her mug. Distributions? Claire nodded, casual but tight. Just figured you might want help reviewing things. You mentioned a while back how tricky those formulas get. Ellen set her cup down and tilted her head, pretending to search her memory. I don't recall mentioning that. Claire blinked. Derek jumped in. We just want to make sure you're not overwhelmed. Some of those legal terms are dense. I appreciate the concern, Ellen said, though I seem to recall passing the bar exam before either of you learned long division. Silence. Claire's smile thinned. Derek scratched his neck. I'll keep you posted, Ellen added lightly. If anything shifts. She didn't mention the file she had already uploaded. She didn't mention Clause 19. She didn't mention the sealed envelope now sitting in Benjamin Kessler's office downtown. After another awkward pause, Claire stood. Well, we should let you rest. We've got a house showing across town. Derek, the keys? He patted his pockets too long before finding them. At the door, Ellen held it open. Claire leaned in for an air kiss. Ellen didn't move. Outside, the wind had picked up, tugging Claire's silk scarf sideways. See you soon? She asked. Ellen nodded, then shut the door before the words could echo. She locked the bolt, walked straight down the hallway, past the photos, past the key hook, back to the laptop waiting on her desk. The Radley Trust dashboard glowed against the dim afternoon light. Login successful. Pending disbursement cycle B4 status. Under review. Primary beneficiaries. Flagged for activity monitoring. She clicked the notification tab. System message. Temporary POA update processed. Manual oversight engaged. Ellen exhaled through her nose, slow and deliberate. She reached for her pen, the yellow pad still waiting beside her. She wrote 2 new words under the last entry. They're watching. So am I. And then she drew a line underneath. Hard. Straight. Permanent. Tuesday arrived, draped in the kind of rain that didn't fall, it just hovered in the air, soft and gray, like the sky had forgotten how to cry properly. Ellen sat by the window, a fleece blanket across her knees, her mug cooling on the windowsill. The hydrangeas outside drooped under the weight of the mist, petals curling inward. She didn't blame them. Her phone lit up. Mila's name. One image. No text. She tapped it open and stared. It was a pencil, sketch careful, full of quiet emotion. Ellen recognized her own face instantly, drawn in soft lines, the slope of her cheek, the wrinkle near her left eye. Beside her, smaller and looking up with a crooked grin, was Mila, holding Ellen's hand. They were seated on a porch bench Ellen hadn't realized, Mila remembered. Tears came with no warning this time. She blinked fast and wiped them away, embarrassed even alone. She placed the phone screen down on the armrest, like it had caught her in something unguarded. Once the lump in her throat settled, she stood and made her way to the office. The numbers always steadied her. She opened the household ledger she kept on her desktop, not the main trust account, but the quarterly expense logs. Ellen believed in paper trails. They didn't lie or forget. They didn't post filtered photos and call them truth. Scrolling backward, she paused at Q3 of the previous year. $4,300 ACH transfer. Startup support. Claire LLC. Her fingers hovered over the mouse. Another line item. $178 floral arrangement, launch day. $1,275 skincare packaging vendor. $614. Copywriting invoice. The numbers lined up like dominoes she hadn't known she'd arranged. She stared at the total. Not for the amount, it wasn't about the money, but for the absence that sat beside it. No call, no card, no email that said, "Thank you, Ellen. We couldn't have done it without you." She opened her drawer and pulled out the branded sample Claire had gifted her last winter. A glass jar with a minimalist label that read, "Unfiltered Radiance for All Ages." The irony landed a little too cleanly now. She set it back in the drawer, unopened. Later that afternoon, Monica appeared again, no knock, just a hollered, "You decent?" followed by footsteps and the faint rattle of grocery bags. Ellen was chopping apples. Define decent. Monica held up a rotisserie chicken and a bottle of sparkling cranberry juice. Peace offering for not pretending to like Claire's serum anymore. Ellen turned. Did I pretend? You were subtle. For you. They sat at the table, quiet as always at first, the kind of silence that holds room for breath. Monica poured 2 glasses. You going Sunday? Ellen shook her head. Not in the mood for performance art? Not in the mood to be invisible in plain sight. Monica picked up an apple slice. Why not test their memory with your absence? Ellen nodded slowly, eyes far away. That's exactly what I planned to do. Sunday came. Ellen stayed home. No car pulled up. No texts buzzed. No one asked if she was running late. She spent the afternoon reading back through old letter sones Robert had written her on yellow notepads when they were too broke for cards. She smiled at the loops in his lowercase e's. He'd once written, "I hope when we're old, you still notice the little things I forget." The phone stayed still until 7:42 p.m. Mila, they didn't even mention you weren't there. I kept waiting for it. But nope, just passed the mashed potatoes and moved on. Ellen stared at the message, then at her own reflection in the darkened window beside her. She looked more like her mother than she ever expected she would. Same eyes, same cheekbones, but the look in her face was different now. Less resigned, more calculating. She picked up the yellow pad again, flipped past the page marked "What They Assume." Started a new page. Absence inventory. First bullet. Skipped a Sunday, no response. Second bullet. Funded their ambition, no thanks. She underlined both, slowly, deliberately. Then she set the pen down and opened her laptop. She didn't log in this time. She just stared at the trust dashboard icon, waiting, measuring the space between silence and strategy. And in that quiet, she whispered aloud to no one. Let's see how long it takes them to notice what's missing next. The delivery came in a sleek, unlabeled box, no gift note, no branding, just matte charcoal packaging and a tracking number Ellen had memorized. She unboxed it slowly, setting each component onto the kitchen counter with quiet precision. A compact smart speaker, smaller than a grapefruit, brushed metal casing, innocuous and modern. Monica walked in mid-unwrapping, carrying a bag of citrus from the co-op. You finally caved? She asked, nodding at the speaker. Joining the surveillance generation? Ellen didn't look up. Number I'm joining the archive. Monica raised an eyebrow but didn't press. That afternoon, Mila dropped by straight from art class, paint still smudged on her forearm, hoodie sleeves half rolled. What's that? She asked, toeing off her sneakers. A gift, Ellen replied, sliding the speaker toward her. For your parents. Family updates, they call it. Voice-activated audio logs, the works. Mila blinked. You're giving them a surveillance mic? Ellen gave her a long, level look. I'm giving them an opportunity. Mila hesitated, then walked around the counter and picked up the small instruction sheet. They'll plug it in if I say it's for syncing our calendars, or that you're trying to be more modern. They won't ask questions if it's wrapped in convenience. Ellen smiled faintly. That's what I'm counting on. Mila's fingers hovered above the packaging. I don't trust Claire anymore. Ellen's smile didn't change. Good instinct. They boxed it again. Mila took it with her when she left, saying she'd swing by her house before her parents got home. She winked at Ellen from the porch. Operation Echo begins. 3 days passed. No texts, no calls. But the speaker lit up in the system dashboard Ellen had bookmarked. Device online. Voice activation enabled. Recording permissions granted. She waited. That Friday, the house was quiet except for the clock ticking near the fireplace. Ellen sipped her tea, logged into the dashboard, and tapped live access. A hum. Then, voices. Unfiltered. Claire, just don't bring it up again. She gets twitchy when you mention money. Derek. Twitchy? She's basically gone already. Half the time she can't remember what she ate for lunch. Claire laughed. Which is why I'm thinking we pad the Q4 line. She doesn't even check the payout formulas. We could add a 0 and she'd probably think it was inflation. Derek again. We wait it out. She keels over, we consolidate. I handle logistics, you manage spin. Mila'll forget eventually. Claire. Please. Mila's still a kid. She has no idea how this stuff works. We'll give her the "it's what Grandma wanted" speech, and she'll move on. Silence. Ellen's hand hovered over the trackpad. Then she hit stop. The speaker light blinked once, then went dark. 2 hours later, she was at her desk. Rain traced lines down the window behind her, slow and steady. She titled a new email. To Benjamin Kessler. Subject: Exhibit A. She attached the audio file, renamed it Radley, Recording, Trust Discussions, WAV. In the body of the email, she typed only 4 words. This should suffice. E. She hit send. Then she walked back to the kitchen, poured herself the last of the evening coffee, and stared out the window toward the Radley side of the neighborhood. Everything looked the same. Quiet, green, perfect. But behind closed doors, she had heard the truth. And now, so would the law. She walked to her yellow legal pad, flipped past the last few entries. At the bottom of the page marked Absence Inventory, she added. Asterisk, asterisk, caught on tape. They think I'm fading. They forgot I wrote the terms. Asterisk, asterisk. She underlined the last line once, then boxed it. And then, quietly, firmly, she opened a drawer marked Documents for Redeployment. Inside, an envelope, already addressed to Benjamin, already notarized. She tapped it once, like a countdown. Game on. The printer hummed in the background, spitting out page after page like a machine finally telling the truth. Ellen stood at the kitchen island, sleeves rolled to her elbows, hands smudged with ink and lemon oil from the cleaning she'd interrupted. Around her lay a collage of carefully excavated fax bank statements, calendar screenshots, text threads, faded thank you cards, or lack thereof, and a manila folder titled simply, Impact Ledger. She wasn't building a case anymore. She was finalizing one. Each offense had its own entry, complete with evidence. October 2021. Claire debuts skincare line, no mention of funding. Receipt. H transfer $4,300. Labeled, Family Launch Support. December 2020. Christmas lunch canceled last minute. They posted from Aspen. Instagram screenshot. Snowed in with style, huge. June 2019. Ellen hospitalized overnight. Derek texts, busy with house stuff. Screenshot. Ugh, sorry, hope you're fine. Crazy reno week. Each memory, once vague and gutting, now had numbers, dates, and receipts. And somehow the paper trail hurt less than the ache had. The door creaked open. Monica stepped in, set her purse down, and took one look at the kitchen table. Jesus, Ellen, she said, crossing the room. You building a lawsuit or a memoir? Ellen didn't look up. Something between the two. Monica scanned the top page. Her eyes caught on the column labeled Emotional Breach Tier 1. She let out a low whistle. "You've got a ledger," she murmured. "Time to balance it." Ellen nodded once and flipped the folder shut. She moved to her desk and opened the trust draft, a living supplement she'd prepared months ago but never enacted. Until now. Supplemental clause, Emotional Breach Protocol. Beneficiaries may be reassessed or placed under conditional review in cases of sustained relational neglect, psychological harm, or erosion of good faith. It had been sitting in her drafts for 2 years, waiting for the moment when silence turned to pattern, when absence crossed into betrayal. She clicked. Enable. The page timestamp updated. 11:03 a.m. Just then, the screen door creaked again. Mila peeked in, her backpack slung low and a sketchpad tucked beneath her arm. "Am I interrupting?" she asked. "Not at all," Ellen said, gesturing her in. Mila slid into the chair beside the printer, eyeing the growing stack. "What's all this?" "Documentation." Mila pulled one sheet forward Ellen's list from 2018. "Wow," she said softly. "They did all this?" Ellen hesitated, then, "Not all at once, just bold enough now." Mila looked up. "Were they always like this?" Ellen's voice didn't falter. "Number, but they've been practicing." She passed Mila a highlighter. "You can mark the ones that hurt most, if you like." They sat for a moment too, generations of clarity, side by side, dissecting a family story someone else had tried to rewrite. When the stack was complete, Ellen gathered the pages and clipped them together. She slid them into an envelope marked Personal Impact Statement Radley Trust File. She opened her email. To Benjamin Kessler. CC. Monica Ellery. Subject: Trust Supplement Plus. Exhibits. She attached the documents and paused. Then she added one line. "Please prepare for the next phase." She hit send. Monica raised a glass of water. "To the next phase." Ellen clinked hers gently in reply. Mila looked between them, suddenly solemn. "What happens now?" Ellen looked down at the legal pad, now filled with inked lines and scars. She flipped to a blank page, wrote one new header, Revised Legacy. And underneath it, she wrote, "Not what they inherit, what they lose." Then, softly, to Mila, "They'll never see this coming." The envelope was unmarked except for her name. No return address, no note. Ellen held it in her hands for a beat longer than usual, weighing the feel of it. The thickness was wrong for a letter. She slid it open with the same letter opener Robert had used for 40 years silver, engraved, sharp. Inside, a single glossy card. $25. National home and kitchen chain. Not even local. No handwriting. No birthday message. No signature. She turned it over. At the bottom, faint but scannable, was the barcode. She reached for her phone. The app took a second to load. She tapped into her digital receipts, navigated to Recent Transactions, and scrolled. There, it wasted weeks ago. Same dollar amount, same store, charged to her personal debit. She stared at it for a long moment, not angry, just precise. Then, calmly, she walked to the printer. It whirred to life, spitting out the receipt. She stapled it to a fresh sheet in the yellow pad. Section title: False Gestures. Entry: $25 gift card. Purchased on my own account. Apology recycled. Monica let herself in mid-page. She was carrying dry cleaning and a bag of cherries. Ellen didn't turn. It arrived. What did? Ellen held up the card. Monica took one look at it and snorted. "Oh my God, you bought your own apology." Ellen nodded. And it came postage due, metaphorically. Monica dropped the bag onto the counter. "That's not a gift. That's laundering guilt." "Poorly," Ellen muttered. "I'd charge them interest if they knew how to calculate it." She tucked the card into the folder under the newest section. It sat alongside Exhibit A and the notarized clause updates. That folder was starting to feel like a second will. Later that evening, Mila appeared with a slice of pie from a diner Ellen liked blackberry crumble, barely holding together in its paper box. They sat in the living room, quiet jazz playing low through the speakers. Ellen set out mismatched dessert plates, the good kind, the kind Claire once called too vintage to be ironic. Mila watched her cut the slice in half. I cleaned my closet today, Mila said between bites. Found a box under my bed. Ellen looked up. It was full of birthday cards, Mila went on. From you! She reached into her hoodie pocket and unfolded one, crinkled at the edges, drawn in Sharpie with a yellow balloon on the front. Inside, the message read, Happy 10th. The world's lucky you were born. Grandma E. Ellen's face softened. You kept them? All of them. They're in a shoebox, labeled proof. Ellen's chest tightened in a way that was both painful and strangely medicinal. Mila hesitated, then added, I've never seen Mom or Dad keep any. From anyone. Ellen folded her napkin slowly. Well, some people remember time in moments. She looked down at the pie, then back at Mila. Others try to replace memory with transactions. Mila touched the corner of the gift card still sitting on the bookshelf, unceremoniously propped against a plant pot. Guess which one they sent? Ellen didn't answer right away. Then she said, almost to herself, Memories don't need wrapping. She stood and walked over to her file drawer. But forgetting, she added, costs more than you think. She slid the folder back into its place. The cabinet closed with a soft, definitive click. The doorbell rang. Not loud, but sharp, late enough to be out of rhythm with neighborly politeness. Ellen and Mila exchanged a look. No one was expected. Mila set her fork down. Ellen stood first. One hand rested lightly on the top of the locked drawer as she passed. She didn't say it out loud, but the thought was clear in her eyes. What they bought her wouldn't compare to what she was about to cost them. The Radleys were in Oregon, according to Instagram. A vineyard again this one, boasting a rustic luxury experience and private wine pairings. Claire had posted a reel of Derek swirling a glass and laughing with two strangers in golf polos. The caption read, When you work hard, you play harder. Number Radley Retreat. Ellen scrolled past the video without stopping. The sound was muted. It didn't matter. At precisely 10:06 a.m., her phone rang. Benjamin Kessler. She answered before the second ring. Good morning, Miss Radley. You sound like a man who's filed something. Benjamin chuckled softly. You know me too well. Ellen leaned back in her chair. Let's hear it. The revised trust has been finalized and logged. Clause 19 is now active. Disbursement rights for Derek and Claire have been moved to conditional pending review. All notices sent, certified. Ellen exhaled not relief, but completion. Outstanding, she said. And the adjustment report? In your inbox. They won't notice until the next cycle unless they're paying attention. They're in wine country, Ellen said. They're not. Benjamin paused. You sure about this, Ellen? No going back, once it's in motion. I was sure 5 birthdays ago, she said. Now I'm just punctual. Monica came by an hour later, with 2 bottles of sparkling cider and a paper bag of sea salt crackers. I assume this calls for a toast, she said, uncorking the bottle with more satisfaction than finesse. Ellen passed her a champagne flute glass, not plastic. Even symbolic things deserved proper handling. Monica raised her glass. To financial filters and emotional boundaries. Ellen touched hers to it. To people who remember what matters. They sipped in silence. It didn't need narration. That evening, Ellen was reading the new quarterly breakdown Benjamin had forwarded when her phone buzzed again. Mila. Just one photo. Derek on a lawn chair wearing a too-tight polo holding up 3 bottles of red wine like he'd won something. Claire was behind him in a wide-brimmed hat, grinning at nothing. The caption written by Mila. Guess who's bragging about his family assets again? Ellen stared at the screen for a long moment, then typed back slowly. Time has a flavor. So does accountability. She didn't hit send immediately. She looked out the window. The garden was beginning to die back for the season hydrangeas, turning paper brittle, rosemary gone woody. Even nature knew when to withhold. She pressed send, then turned back to her files. She opened the yellow legal pad, wrote a new entry beneath the previous list. Asterisk, asterisk, clause 19 executed. Pending status confirmed. They're smiling, but they don't know what's missing yet. Asterisk, asterisk. Her pen hovered. She added, let them brag. And below it, one last line for the day. This time, the silence is mine. From the hall, the old answering machine blinked. One unheard message. She didn't play it. She just let it sit, like so many things they'd left sitting too long. And for the first time in years, Ellen closed the folder, stacked the papers neatly, and smiled without irony. They wouldn't know what hit them until the next cycle ran dry. The email came at 6:04 a.m. subject line all caps, as if urgency could rewrite precedent. Subject: Urgent Trust Review Q4 Allocation. From Claire Radley. CC: Derek Radley. The body was short. We noticed a pending delay in the next distribution. Wanted to confirm if this was just an admin thing or if you've made changes we weren't notified of. Also, we'd like to formally request a 10% increase this quarter for travel and family needs. Let us know. Hope you're well. Ellen sipped her tea and reread it twice. The tone, the timing, the complete absence of acknowledgement. She opened a reply window, but didn't type a single word. Instead, she opened a new folder on her desktop and titled it Formal Denial Q4. Attached, Clause 19 Invocation Notice, signed and timestamped. Itemized ledger of 5 years of relational infractions. Voice memo file. Radley, recording, trust discussions. Wayavi. She renamed the combined file Nothing, Exhibit B. Then she drafted the reply. Subject: Urgent Trust Review. Q4 Allocation. 2. Claire Radley. CC: Derek Radley. Claire, thank you for your inquiry. Your current allocation remains under performance review as per Clause 19 of the Radley Family Living Trust. Attached, you'll find documentation relevant to your concern. Best regards, Ellen. Attachment: Nothing. Exhibit B, PDF. She hit send and leaned back in her chair. The autumn light was creeping sideways through the blinds. Cold. Honest. The reply came 3 hours later. Claire, you're punishing us for nothing. There's no reason for this. Ellen stared at the screen, lips pressed in a thin, unreadable line. She didn't respond. She didn't have to. By mid-afternoon, Mila texted. They're freaking out. Mom was pacing. Dad said something about emergency arbitration. They think you're dying. Ellen thumbed out her reply slowly. Not dying. Documenting. She placed her phone face down. Then she reached for her red folder, Medical Directives. A few pages in, the names Derek Radley and Claire Radley appeared beside titles. Primary medical proxy and secondary proxy. She crossed them out with a felt-tip pen. Then she opened her email again. To Benjamin Kessler. Subject: Medical proxy and POA update. Benjamin, please initiate the filing of updated healthcare power of attorney. Claire and Derek are to be removed from all medical decision-making capacities, effective immediately. Mila Radley is to be listed as sole proxy. New form signed and attached. Best, Ellen. She attached the notarized document, dated that morning. Mila had signed as witness. Monica had delivered it to the notary herself. Within minutes, Benjamin replied. Filed and confirmed. Mila is now listed as your full medical POA. Official letter to follow. Monica arrived before dinner with 2 cartons of Thai food and a 6-pack of ginger beer. They're going to lose their damn minds, she said, handing Ellen a fork. Ellen nodded. Let them. They ate quietly. Outside, the wind was stirring dry leaves into brittle circles on the lawn. The trust printer blinked. Confirmation. Updated POA received and filed. Mila texted again, this time with a meme. Derek mid-sip of wine. Blurred. Clearly in mid-sputter. Captioned, When you realize you're not the main character anymore. Ellen chuckled softly, then replied, Main characters write the story, not just live in it. She flipped open her yellow pad. At the top of a new page, she wrote, Full revocation stage 1 complete. And at the bottom, next, no more masks. Because next, she wasn't just taking their money. She was taking away the version of her they had so carelessly underestimated. It was just after 3 p.m. when Ellen heard the sound she'd always recognized but hadn't heard in months, Derek's engine. Too fast down the street. Claire's door always slammed second. No knock. Just the shuffle of gravel, the quick tap of Claire's heels on the front steps, and then the bell pressed, not rung. Aggressive. Ellen didn't rush. She closed the yellow pad, bookmarked her page in the estate code's binder, and stood. She unlocked the front door with one motion and opened it halfway. The two of them stood on the porch, windswept but rehearsed. Claire smiled too quickly. Derek didn't smile at all. "We were in the area," Claire said, as though they still lived in the same emotional zip code. Ellen held the door open. Inside, the house was warm, cinnamon in the air from a candle Monica had left burning. Ellen gestured toward the couch without a word. They sat. She didn't. Claire cleared her throat. "We think this has all gotten a little out of hand." Ellen tilted her head, waiting. Claire leaned forward, voice low and sugary. "Let's not make this legal, Ellen. This is family. We can talk like family." Ellen crossed her arms. "You already made it legal." She turned, walked over to the side table, tapped her phone screen, then Bluetooth connected to the speaker on the shelf. One tap more. Claire's voice crackled to life. "We could add a zero and she'd probably think it was inflation." Derek flinched. Claire's face drained. "We wait it out. She keels over, we consolidate." Claire reached forward, as if she could pull the words back. "Okay," Derek said, raising his hands, laughing once awkward, hollow. "It was a joke. We were venting. People say dumb things." Ellen stared at them, still silent. The recording played on for another 10 seconds. Claire's laugh. Derek's strategy. A closing line. "She doesn't check the payout formulas." Ellen tapped to stop it. No sound filled the space, just the soft ticking of the kitchen clock and the hum of the fridge. Then Ellen finally spoke. "That wasn't venting. That was architecture." Claire's voice cracked. "You're twisting it." Ellen walked to the sideboard, poured herself water from the glass carafe, and took her time with the sip. "Funny," she said, setting the glass down. "That's what Robert used to say when Derek got caught forging his signature in high school. 'You're twisting it, Dad.'" She walked back to her chair but didn't sit. "You weren't venting," she said. "You were calculating. I just finally learned to stop calling it carelessness." Outside the front window, Monica stood on her porch, arms folded across her chest, watching. The kind of still that was less curiosity and more witness. Derek stood. "We came to talk like adults. If you're not willing to—" "Sit," Ellen said. Her voice didn't rise, but something in it cut through the performance. Derek sat. Claire's hands were clasped tightly in her lap. "We didn't mean it. You've always been generous. We were frustrated." "You mean exposed?" Ellen said. She reached for the envelope on the table thick, marked Exhibit B, filed copy. She didn't hand it over, just set it between them. "I trusted you," Ellen said quietly. "With money? With decisions? With Mila?" Claire's mouth opened, but Ellen raised a hand. "Save the breath. You'll need it to spin this for your next dinner party." Outside, Monica's phone flashed. She snapped a single photo of the parked car in Ellen's driveway, then lowered it without comment. Inside, the silence hardened. Derek stood again, slower this time. "We'll talk to Benjamin." "You should," Ellen said. Claire rose, nearly whispering. "We just wanted to fix this." Ellen nodded. "You did." And then she turned her back to them and walked into the kitchen. The front door clicked shut behind them, soft but final. Ellen didn't watch them leave. Instead, she opened the drawer beside her and pulled out the list she'd started the day after her birth. Day. She added a new entry, showed them the truth. They flinched. Then, lied again. Outside, Derek's car started, revved too hard, and rolled down the street without pause. Inside, Ellen circled the last line she'd just written. Next time, there won't be a door to open. The next morning, Ellen found the email waiting in her inbox. The subject line was softer now. Less panic, more plea. Subject: "We miss you and we're sorry." From Derek Radley. The message was longer than his usual 2-line politeness. "Mom, we didn't handle things well. We were stressed, not malicious. The pressure of everything, Mila growing up, the business none of it excuses what we said. But we want to make this right. We still care. Please don't let this be permanent." Ellen sat back in her chair, reading it twice. The language was familiar, sanitized, strategic, soaked in the kind of regret that appears just after the consequences do. 10 minutes later, another email arrived. Subject: "Let's try again." From Claire Radley. "Ellen, we've changed. We've taken a hard look at everything, and we know we've hurt you. Please let us show you we've grown. Reconsider access. Give us a chance to prove it like family should." Ellen rested her hand on the desk, fingertips lightly brushing the edge of the keyboard. Her cursor blinked in the empty reply box for a moment. Then she opened her document folder and copied the exact language from the trust supplement. She pasted it into the reply, plain and center-aligned. Clause 19. Upon official invocation by the grantor and filing of notice with the appointed legal trustee, all beneficiary privileges under review become irrevocably suspended unless restored by a unanimous vote of independent fiduciary council. She signed the email without a greeting or a closing. Just, Ellen. She clicked send. The silence that followed wasn't cold. It was earned. That evening, the kitchen smelled of vanilla and powdered sugar. Monica had brought cupcakes of them, in a box with a gold ribbon she claimed she found on clearance, but bought full price anyway. Chocolate for destruction, she said, handing Ellen a fork. Lemon for liberation. Ellen laughed, actually laughed. And red velvet for? Righteous fury, Monica replied, obviously. They sat on the back porch with mugs of chamomile, jackets zipped up against the wind. The trees had started to turn the first oranges sharp against the graying sky. Monica took a bite of her cupcake and said, mouth full, you know they're going to beg again. They already have. And they'll say they've changed. Ellen nodded. That's the thing about change. You don't get to choose when people believe it. The screen door creaked. Mila stepped out, pulling a blanket around her shoulders. Her hair was pulled into a messy bun, her expression unreadable. She sat beside Ellen, quiet for a long moment, then asked softly, is this really what you want? Ellen didn't answer immediately. She looked out across the yard at the bench Robert built by hand, now chipped at the corners, at the hydrangeas, fading into winter's edge, at the house where she had tried, again and again, to be enough. Then she turned to Mila. What I want, she said, stopped mattering to them 5 birthdays ago. Mila didn't press. She just leaned against Ellen's arm, and they watched the last light drain from the day. Inside, Ellen's phone pinged with a delivery confirmation certified mail, notice of trust amendment received and processed. But she didn't move. The world outside had shifted, and so had she. She raised her cupcake, a quiet toast. To boundaries, she said. Monica raised hers. And to people who finally stop asking permission to draw them. They clinked the cupcakes together like wine glasses. Somewhere in the distance, a car door slammed. But Ellen didn't turn to look. Because when the window finally closes, you don't check to see who's still knocking. You savor the silence on the other side. The trust binder was heavier than Mila expected. She ran her hand along the leather edge, fingers pausing at the brass corners that had worn smooth with time. It didn't look like something that could contain heartbreak or resolve, but it did. Ellen placed it on the dining room table, flipping it open with reverence more than hesitation. The pages inside were crisp but annotated, every margin filled with Ellen's looping notes in blue ink her lawyer's mind never fully at rest. Ready? Ellen asked. Mila nodded. Teach me. They sat side by side, the overhead light casting a warm pool across the table, autumn pressing against the windows in slow motion. Mila began reading aloud. Her voice was quiet at first, but steady. Clause 14. Beneficiary rights may be conditionally reviewed upon discovery of material misrepresentation, fiscal manipulation, or evidence of sustained moral erosion. She paused, looked up. Moral erosion? Ellen didn't blink. It means no one gets to wear 2 masks forever. Mila looked back at the page. And if they do? They lose the right to call it love, Ellen said, soft but sharp. Or family. They kept reading. By page 21, Mila stopped again, brow furrowed. There's a handwritten addendum, she said, tapping the margin. Ellen leaned in, her handwriting. Grantor may redirect disbursements in cases of sustained emotional alienation, without prior notice. Mila read it twice, then asked, You wrote that? I did, Ellen said. Right after the 2nd birthday, they forgot. And you filed it? Right after the 5th. Mila stared at the line again. Redirect. To what? Before Ellen could answer, a knock came at the side window Monica's usual entrance when she wasn't in the mood to pretend it was a visit and not a check-in. She cracked the window open just enough to lean in. Just so you know, Monica said, chewing on a peppermint. They're parked across the street again. Haven't come to the door. Claire's been pretending to scroll on her phone for 15 minutes. Derek's staring at your mailbox like it owes him something. Ellen didn't even glance outside. "Thank you, dear," she said, turning a page. Monica nodded and disappeared back through the hedges like a suburban sentinel. Mila looked toward the window but said nothing. After a beat, she turned back to the binder. "Okay," she said, flipping to the very last section. "What happens to the money now?" Ellen didn't answer right away. She pulled her reading glasses off and set them on the table beside her. Then, very deliberately, she reached for the yellow legal pad. She flipped to a page titled Legacy Plan Final. Beneath it was a list: names, dates, percentages. Mila's name was at the top. Ellen tapped it once. "Now," she said, "it begins to mean something." Outside, Claire's car engine turned over. Derek opened his door. Neither of them came up the driveway, and neither of them would like the answer to Mila's question. But Ellen wasn't writing this chapter for them anymore. She looked at her granddaughter, pointed at the clause again, and smiled. "This isn't just about money," she said. "It's about remembering who gets to decide what it means." And in that quiet, Mila understood this was the day the trust became a story, and the story finally became hers. Ellen wore navy. Not black, this wasn't a funeral, but something structured, something deliberate. The weather outside Benjamin Kessler's downtown office was drab, but she felt clear, solid. The kind of clarity that didn't ask for approval. Mila sat beside her in the waiting room, holding a canvas tote with a thermos of tea, a sketchbook, and a pen. She hadn't said much on the drive over. She didn't need to. Inside, Benjamin's office smelled faintly of cedar and old paper. His desk was tidy, as always, but there was an extra stack of file folders today. Burgundy tabs. Legal weight. "Morning, Ellen," he said, standing to greet her with the quiet respect he reserved for moments that felt like more than law. "You ready?" "Ready's not the word," she said, taking the pen he offered. The documents were already open to the signature lines. She scanned each section anyway, just one last time, like a conductor walking the aisle before curtain. Article 4, B. Derek Radley removed from all current and future disbursement eligibility. Article 4C. Claire Radley removed from all fiduciary, proxy, and successor roles. No protest, no footnotes. Just bold, black ink where their names used to be. Ellen signed slowly, precisely. Section 6A. Mila Radley Soul. Beneficiary, successor trustee, medical and legal power of attorney. She turned to Mila, who was watching like a witness, not a participant. "You'll need to sign this one, too," Ellen said, sliding the page forward. Mila blinked. "Me? You're not just inheriting this," Ellen replied. "You're stewarding it." Benjamin cleared his throat, carefully. "We've also included the language for the literacy fund. I've marked the redirect clause." Ellen flipped to the final amendment. Establishment of Radley Literacy Fund, 18% of total trust capital to be allocated to community libraries and youth reading initiatives, under the stewardship of Mila Radley. She signed. And with that, the Radley name was rewritten. Not with vengeance, with intention. Benjamin sat back and exhaled. "Ellen, you've changed the course of your family's legacy, legally, and I'd say ethically." Ellen folded the pen in her hand like a ribbon. "Then I've done my job." Monica met them on the sidewalk outside the office, leaning against a parking meter with 2 coffees in hand and a smirk that didn't ask questions. "Well?" Ellen raised the manila folder slightly. "It's done." Monica handed over the coffee and pulled her into a hug. "That wasn't a signature session," she whispered. "That was a retirement party and a revolution." Ellen laughed into her friend's shoulder. "About time." They walked down the street together, Ellen in the middle, the binder clutched under her arm, Mila quietly snapping a photo of their shadows stretched across the pavement. That night, Ellen placed the updated trust binder on the shelf in her study, next to Robert's old copy of the Federalist Papers and a first edition of To Kill a Mockingbird. She stared at it for a moment, then took a small embossed label and pressed it onto the spine. Radley Trust Final Edition. From the living room, Mila called out, "Grandma?" Ellen turned. "Yes?" Mila held up her sketchbook. "I think I want to draw that fund's first flyer myself." Ellen smiled. "That's the first rule of legacy, darling. You make it personal." The house felt quieter than usual, not empty, just clean, like the end of something overdue. And on the front porch, unnoticed in the fading light, sat an unopened letter. Return address, none. Postmark, 3 days old. Ellen didn't reach for it, because some chapters don't get acknowledgments, they get closure. The diner was tucked off Main Street, the kind of place where time forgot to update the wallpaper and the jukebox still worked if you kicked it twice. Ellen hadn't been there in years, so when the hostess pulled back the red vinyl curtain to the private booth section and said, "They're waiting," Ellen blinked. Waiting? She stepped inside. There, under flickering fairy lights and mismatched helium balloons, sat a small, improbably assembled crew. Monica already halfway through a strawberry milkshake. Benjamin still in his suit, tie slightly loosened, holding a gift bag that looked far too tasteful for diner decor. And two faces that stunned Ellen into silence. Mrs. Delaney and Mr. Finnegan, her 10th grade English teacher and her college debate coach, now older, softer, but unmistakably them. "Surprise," Mila said, standing from her corner seat and grinning like a kid at Christmas. Ellen stared for a moment too long. Then laughed a sharp, full sound that surprised even her. "What is this?" Mila beamed. "The birthday dinner you never got." Ellen shook her head. "You are ridiculous. And yet," Monica said, raising her milkshake and toast, "here we are." The waitress brought out a cake 5 minutes later, frosting slightly tilted, candles already melting. It read in looping pink script, "To presents not blood." Ellen clapped a hand to her mouth, then laughed again. This time louder, richer. She nearly had to sit. Benjamin poured coffee. Mrs. Delaney told the story of Ellen's first annotated short story and how she'd written in the margins, "What you feel matters. Say it louder." Mr. Finnegan remembered how Ellen had once dismantled a mock court argument so thoroughly the professor had asked her to leave it slightly less fatal next time. They told stories Ellen had forgotten she'd lived. They weren't exaggerated. They were accurate and full of presence. Dinner was grilled cheese and tomato biscuit simple and perfect. There was no performance, no apology cake, no conditional smiles. Just space and time and truth. Toward the end of the evening, Mila slid a wrapped bundle across the table. Ellen raised an eyebrow. "Another gift? This one's overdue," Mila said. "It's called Letters You Should Have Received." Ellen unwrapped it, carefully soft black leather, spiral-bound, hand-labeled. Inside, pages of printed letters, each titled by year and written in Mila's handwriting. The first was labeled, "Age 9. She flipped it open. "Dear Grandma E., I know you don't like when people talk over each other, so I'm writing instead. I always noticed. When Mom forgot. When Dad got loud. When your tea went cold before anyone said happy birthday. I saw you smile anyway. But I still noticed. Love, Mila." Ellen pressed the page closed with the flat of her hand. Her breath caught in her throat knot in pain, in something that had waited too long to be seen. Mila said nothing, just nudged a napkin her way. Ellen dabbed the corner of her eye, then whispered, "Thank you." "You don't have to thank me," Mila said. "You just have to believe it." From across the booth, Monica raised her milkshake again. "To being noticed?" Benjamin raised his coffee. "To being remembered." And Ellen? She didn't raise anything at first. She just closed the book gently, hands resting on top, then looked around the table. People she hadn't had to chase, or correct, or forgive. Only trust. She lifted her mug of tea, at last, to the people who stayed. They clinked quietly, no fanfare. Outside, across the street, the Radleys' SUV sat parked, engine off, lights dimmed, watching maybe, waiting likely. Inside, Ellen didn't care. Because presence isn't passive, and tonight, her seat was full, and so was her life. The check arrived, folded into a sterile envelope, couriered, not mailed, like guilt trying to pass for formality. Amount, $18,462.39. Restitution. The final accounting for Derek's unauthorized withdrawals over 4 fiscal cycles slipped past her, then, but not now, not anymore. Ellen didn't flinch at the number. She'd already done the real math. She walked it straight to the bank that afternoon. The teller, a young man with nervous eyes, asked her twice if she wanted to split the deposit. "I do," she said. Half into the Radley Literacy Fund, already growing, already opening doors in neighborhoods Claire had once called transitional. The other half into Mila's college savings. When she left the bank, she didn't keep the receipt. She didn't need proof anymore. Just progress. That evening, Mila burst through the door, cheeks flushed from the cold, phone in hand. She messaged me, she said, not even unzipping her jacket. Mom. Ellen looked up from her knitting. She said she wants to explain everything, that I'm too young to understand what happened. Did you reply? Mila held up her phone. Blocked. Ellen said nothing at first. She simply reached over, squeezed Mila's hand once, then returned to her yarn. Loop, pull, anchor. Later that week, Ellen climbed the attic ladder for the first time in months. Dust choked the corners. Mice had chewed through one of the old Christmas wreaths. She found the plastic bin labeled Derrick Grade School. Inside, spelling bee ribbons, bent soccer trophies, a faded Cub Scout sash still smelling faintly of pine. She stared at the contents for a long time. Then she called the local single mothers support center and offered the whole box for their charity silent auction. Use them however you like, she said. They're barely used. Saturday morning, Monica knocked with matching tote bags and thermoses of chai. First shift, she said. Ready to shelve some overdue legacies? The local library buzzed with warmth volunteers setting up a new youth reading corner with hand-labeled bins. Space, spies, secrets, stories that feel true. Ellen was assigned to fiction. Mila waved from across the room, surrounded by second graders with glue sticks and construction paper. Her shirt read, Literacy is Rebellion. Ellen watched her laugh easy, unburdened. A chapter all her own. She picked up a copy of A Tree Grows in Brooklyn and placed it on the shelf, just beneath To Kill a Mockingbird. Right beside their eyes were watching God. She smiled. Legacy didn't come with velvet ribbons or gilded frames. It looked like that shelf. It sounded like that laugh. That night, at home, Ellen opened her yellow legal pad one last time. The pages were heavy with ink and memory, now an archive of grief, recalibration, and intent. She flipped to the final page, and in handwriting steadier than it had been in years, she wrote, Final entry year 5. Legacy is not inheritance. It's clarity. It's the truth told without apology. It's the mirror held up long enough for everyone to choose who they want to be. She tapped the corner of the pad twice, the way Robert used to before he closed a book. And then, as the wind outside teased the edges of her window screen, Ellen whispered the line she hadn't spoken out loud in months. The one that started it all. They forgot my birthday for the 5th year. Her eyes didn't waver. Her voice didn't crack. So I remembered the clause that would write them out forever.